welcome back to the deep dive.
So today we're tackling something that, usually gets filed under soft skills or maybe even marketing fluff. But when you actually look at the data, it's much closer to a hard science. We're talking about world-class service.
And when you say that, most people immediately think of one thing, the lion and the crown.
The Ritz Carlton, exactly. It's always the go-to case study. But we're not really here to talk about hotels.
No.
We're here to talk about the operating system behind them. We've got this fascinating set of interviews and materials all centered on Horst Schulze.
He's the co-founder, the former president and COO. I mean, he basically wrote the code for what we think of as modern luxury service.
So what's so striking when you dig into this research is that Schulze, he doesn't sound like a hotelier.
Not at all. He sounds like a general. He's 87 years old now, but if you look at the transcript of his latest interview, the intensity is it's palpable.
He calls himself relentless.
And you believe it. After looking at his career, you totally believe it. He's definitely not the customer's always right smiling manager stereotype. He is obsessed with standards. And that's really what I want to get into.
Yeah.
This isn't a story about fluffy towels. It's about human psychology, rigorous standards, and this concept he calls high intent.
That's the core of it right there.
Yeah.
Schulze argues that most businesses, and honestly most employees, they just operate on function. They do a task.
Check the box.
Exactly. Check the box. Schulze built an empire by operating on intent. And that gap, the one between function and intent, that's where you either build a legendary brand or you just become a commodity.
He has this one specific phrase that defines it all. I think we should use it as our anchor for this whole deep dive. It's a promise he made to a mentor when he was just a kid, and it sounds bizarre.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
He said, "I promise not to be a chair."
It sounds totally absurd, doesn't it? I promise not to be a chair.
It really does. But I think by the end of this, everyone listening is going to be asking themselves if they're being a chair in their own job. Before we unpack that metaphor, though, we need the context. Because his idea of service, it wasn't born in some boardroom. It was born in a war zone.
Literally. He was born in 1939 in a small German village. His father was drafted, eventually forced into the Nazi Party, which his mother apparently despised.
So his childhood is just sleeping in cellars during bombing raids.
Yeah, but he talks so vividly about his mother maintaining this spirit of excellence and love, even in a cellar. It seems like that's where he learned that your environment doesn't have to dictate your attitude.
He learned to separate the circumstance from the self.
Exactly. And at 14, he leaves home. And this is the critical part. He didn't want to serve people because he was servile. He wanted to work in hotels because, to a boy from a bombed-out village, a hotel just represented an orderly, elegant world.
It was an escape into excellence. So he's 14, scrubbing floors, and he meets this head waiter, a maitre d'.
And this is it. This is the origin of the whole chair philosophy.
This maitre d' sounds terrifying.
Oh, the archetype of old-school European discipline. But he pulls young Horst aside one day and says two things that basically change the industry. First, don't come to work. Come here to create excellence.
Which is a nice slogan. You can put it on a poster. But then comes the second line.
Promise me you won't be a chair.
And the logic behind it is, it's brutal, but it's brilliant. A chair has a function.
To be sat on.
Right. It has no choice, no soul. It just is.
So the maitre d' is telling him, if you come to work and you just wash the dishes or just check a guest in or just write the code.
Your chair.
You're a tool in the room. You're just fulfilling a function.
And that's the distinction he made. He said, we are human beings. We have the privilege of having intent. So your function is serving food, but your intent is to create a sense of well-being for the guest.
Function versus intent. That's the whole takeaway. Function is the what. Intent is the emotional outcome you're trying to engineer.
And Schulze saw this in action. He watched this maitre d's talking with these, aristocrats and tycoons, people way above him socially.
But the dynamic was flipped.
The guests were seeking the maitre d's approval.
And Schulze had this epiphany. If he defined himself by his function, dishwasher, he was a nobody. But if he defined himself by his intent to create excellence, then he was a gentleman. He could define his own worth.
Which leads directly, a straight line, to the famous Ritz Carlton motto.
We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
It was revolution inside the industry. At the time, in the 60s and 70s, hotel staff were just servants. They were supposed to be invisible.
And Schulze just destroyed that idea. He told his staff, "You are not servants, you are professionals. It's a transaction of excellence between equals."
It gives them dignity. And that's huge, right? When people feel dignified, they perform better. But okay, here's the challenge. It's one thing to have high intent when you're one person or a small team, but Ritz Carlton had tens of thousands of employees. How do you possibly operationalize "don't be a chair" at that kind of scale?
That's the billion-dollar question. And Schulze's answer was data. He didn't just preach it, he measured it. He's obsessed with what he calls the science of service.
So let's talk about the 10-foot rule. It sounds so simple, almost too simple.
But the data set behind it is massive. They analyzed something like 400,000 guest comment cards.
Oh, 100,000.
A huge number. And they were looking for the correlation between staff behaviors and overall guest satisfaction. They found this massive, massive signal around first impressions.
Statistically dominant, he called it.
Totally. They found that if the very first interaction, the doorman, the front desk, if that was excellent, the satisfaction scores for the rest of the stay were almost bulletproof.
That's wild. So if the doorman is great, I don't care that my soup is cold.
You care, but you're more likely to forgive it. The data showed a great first impression just primes the guest to look for good things. Their brain is kind of looking to confirm they made a good choice.
And if the first interaction was cold or indifferent?
The guest becomes a detective looking for crimes. They start looking for flaws. A speck of dust. The ice took 10 minutes, So Schulze made the 10-foot rule a non-negotiable standard. If you're within 10 feet of a guest, you look them in the eye. You say, "Welcome."
It changes their neurological state. It signals, you belong here, you're safe. It just stops them from being defensive.
And he made sure this wasn't just some rule in a dusty handbook. He drilled it during orientation, which, frankly, his whole approach to orientation is a key insight for anyone in leadership.
Right. He makes a big distinction between orientation and onboarding.
Yeah, and most of us just get onboarded. Onboarding is functional. Here's your laptop, fill out this tax form, here's the bathroom, good luck.
It's chair training.
It absolutely is. Schulze saw orientation as a significant emotional event. He, the president of the company, would personally fly to every single new hotel opening to do it himself.
He wouldn't let them work until he'd spoken to them.
Yeah. Paid them to just sit and listen. For up to 10 days sometimes. He'd say, "I've hired you, but you can't work yet." And he'd spend that time explaining the soul of the company.
He was front-loading the culture. Get the software right at the beginning.
And he had this brutal metric for whether it was working. He didn't care about those long employee engagement surveys. He cared about one question.
Would you recommend that your mother work here?
That is such a high bar. You might tell a friend about a job with a toxic boss if the pay is good, but your mom. You only send your mom somewhere she'll be respected and safe.
And if the answer was no?
He knew the management was broken no matter what the profit margins said.
Okay, so we have the philosophy, don't be a chair, and the training.
Mm-hmm.
But things still go wrong. A TV breaks, an order is late, and this is where the famous $2,000 rule comes in.
This is the part of the model that just terrifies traditional finance guys. Every single employee, housekeeper, gardener, anyone could spend up to $2,000 to fix a guest's problem.
With no manager approval. To a CFO, that just sounds like a massive hole in the ship. I mean, 25,000 employees spending $2,000 each. You're bankrupt.
But that's thinking functionally. Schulze was looking at customer lifetime value. He calculated that a loyal Ritz customer is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. If that customer leaves angry, they become what he calls a brand terrorist.
Terrorist. That is strong language.
It is, but it's accurate business-wise. They actively work against you. They tell their friends. They post bad reviews. So the math is simple. Are you willing to risk $200,000 in future business to save $50 on a breakfast today?
Of course not. So he empowered the staff to save the customer on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And the immediacy is the key, isn't it?
It restores the guest status. But here's the really fascinating part. The actual usage. They were worried about abuse, right? Housekeepers buying guests Rolexes.
Sure.
But the data showed the average spend was tiny. Most problems get solved with a free drink or comping a dry cleaning bill.
So it wasn't about the money.
No. It was about the psychology of the employee. When you tell a housekeeper, "I trust you with $2,000, you're telling them you are a professional. You are validating that they are a lady or gentleman.
It creates ownership. He said he worked with hundreds of managers in his career, but only a few true leaders.
And that's his distinction. Managers just make sure you follow the rules. They ensure function. Leaders inspire purpose. That $2,000 rule is a leadership tool. It forces the employee to think like an owner.
It gets rid of the excuse, sorry, I can't help you, that's against policy.
It obliterates that excuse.
So this brings us to the tension in the material. This isn't just a history lesson. Schulze left Ritz Carlton years ago. He founded the Capella Hotel Group, and he is highly critical of what the Ritz has become.
He's heartbroken. I mean, you can hear it. When he left, Ritz was ranked the #1 hotel brand in the world. Today, it's sitting at number 26.
26. That's a collapse. That's not a bad quarter. That's a systemic failure.
And meanwhile, his new company, Capella, is #1. So the methodology still works. The breakdown at Ritz is just perfectly illustrated by this Fort Lauderdale story from the interview.
Oh, this story is painful. Anyone who travels a lot has a version of this story.
The interviewer, Patrick Bet-David, he booked a specific suite at the Fort Lauderdale Ritz for a big strategy meeting. He needed a certain wall layout for sticky notes.
Booked it months in advance.
Months. He gets there, the room is gone. They gave it to a sports team that wanted a massage room.
So they prioritized a bigger one-time payment over a loyal customer's commitment. But, mistakes happen. The failure wasn't the overbooking. It was the recovery.
100%. The general manager offers him a 50% refund.
Now, okay, I'll play devil's advocate. To a lot of people, half your money back sounds like a pretty good deal. Why does Schulze call that an insult?
Because this is the core of everything. A refund is a transaction. It's functional. It says, we messed up. Here's a financial commodity to shut you up. It treats the guests like a vendor.
It commoditizes the relationship. It puts a price tag on your anger.
Exactly. Schulze says true service is emotional, not financial. The GM should have come out, looked him in the eye, and taken total ownership. I messed up. I am so sorry that I ruined your meeting. How can I fix this for you?
The guest didn't want the money. He wanted his frustration validated.
Validation is priceless. Cash is cheap. By offering cash, the GM proved that the hotel had become a chair. It was just selling square footage. The intent to care for the guest was just gone.
And that's the danger. When you replace empathy with policy, you start that slide from #1 down to number 26. You can have the same marble floors, but the soul is gone.
And Schulze really believes this is a crisis of purpose everywhere, not just in hotels. Companies are optimizing for function efficiency, automation, and they're forgetting their intent.
It's a difference between we process mortgages and we help families buy homes.
One is a function, the other is a purpose. One is boring, the other is inspiring, and you can feel it the second you interact with them.
He applies this relentless standard to everything, even his marriage. I love that detail.
47 years. He says his intent isn't just to stay married. His intent is to stay in love.
Which requires a completely different set of actions.
A totally different mindset. It requires the same discipline as running a 5-star hotel.
It really is a powerful framework. You can apply function versus intent to your job, your parenting, your anything.
If you're just checking boxes, you're a chair. And chairs are replaceable. But if you bring intent, if you bring your humanity to it, you become indispensable.
And that's the challenge we want to leave you with. Look at your calendar for tomorrow. The meetings, the tasks, the emails. Are you just going to fulfill the function? Or are you going to bring a specific high-level intent to what you do?
Promise us you won't be a chair.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you on the next one.